Merry Christmas, one and all. This year, DC has crossed over Batman with a very odd character, and that's saying something for Batman since he's crossed over with aliens, predators, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the Max. Batman's strange new co-star has been said to be stealthier than Ryu Hayabusa, more all-knowing than Odin, more resourceful than Tony Stark, and is rumored to possess strange mutant powers according to a certain Disney publishing subsidiary. He goes by many names, but you might know him as Santa Claus. And this December, in the pages of Batman Santa Claus Silent Night, DC is revealing that Santa once tutored Batman in the ways of stealth and Kringle skill. The internet has been buzzing about DC's Christmas present to the world, but did you know that Batman's best friend Superman not only met Santa decades ago, but has had several adventures with the Jolly Man in Red? Pour yourself some hot cocoa and get comfy by the fireplace because we're going to delve into the history of Superman and Santa Claus, the North Pole neighbors. The first time Superman met Santa occurred very early in Superman's career in the pages of 1940's Superman's Christmas Adventure. Superman was only 2 years old at the time. The story is so early in his career that he's yet to develop the power to fly or use heat vision. The story begins with Lois and Clark developing the idea of the Daily Planet running a charity drive for Christmas toys. And look who approves of their charity. It's the big Kringle himself. Apparently, the Daily Planet has international circulation. I guess its name really is appropriate, isn't it? A common complaint I hear these days about Superman stories is that Superman isn't very proactive, that all he does is respond to emergencies. Well, if you have that complaint, pick up some Golden Age stories like this one sometime, because during the Golden Age Superman, both as Superman and as Clark Kent, did little social improvement projects like this toy drive all the time. And speaking of being proactive, while walking around Metropolis, Superman investigates a noise coming from inside a mansion with his X-ray vision and finds a spoiled brat throwing a temper tantrum because he doesn't like his toys. I don't think this scenario is as common as it used to be in decades past. Nowadays, I don't think it's hard to get kids to appreciate their toys. I think it's hard to get them to put their toys down, namely their phones and all the digital toys they contain. But the cure to brattiness is the same regardless of decade. It's a father figure. Enter a super father figure. Superman takes the brat on a flight around Metropolis to open his eyes to the lives other, less fortunate children live. It was a common Golden Age plot for Superman to kidnap bad guys and play Ghost of Christmas Future with them to get them to change their ways. In Superman 1, he famously took a war profiteer to the front lines and forced him to fight in the trenches so that he would know how war felt. But with his target being a child, Superman is far more gentle than usual. He shows the boy a girl who treasures the only doll she owns, and boy who cries because he hasn't a single thing, not a single toy at all, and the spoiled brat grows a little and resolves to donate his toys to the Metropolis toy drive. Now, if this was a modern comic, the story would be over here, but we're dealing with a Golden Age comic. Decompression is a trend that's a few decades off, so we're just getting started. Why, yes, that is a rocket ship heading to Santa's North Pole science fortress. This is why I love old comic books. Note that Santa and Superman aren't North Pole neighbors at this point in time. We're a few years away from Superman building his secret sanctuary and a few decades away from him building his more familiar Fortress of Solitude, so I like to think he got the idea of a secret base from Santa Claus himself. And may I say, I love the look of Santa's base. It's like Jabba's palace by way of Flash Gordon. I just adore it. And what is that curvy beam coming out of the tower? I bet it's concentrated Christmas magic being broadcast around the world. Does the world seem a little shinier around the holidays? That's because of radiated Christmas magic. Anyway, say hello to the antagonists of our story, Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meanie. Grouch is the Ebenezer Scrooge look-alike in purple, and Meanie is the Ebenezer Scrooge look-alike in green. If you're finding it odd that Superman is going up against villains as silly as these two, remember that we're very early in the Golden Age. The tone of early Superman stories wasn't too dissimilar from early Captain Marvel stories, and you can look at Superman's earliest foes for supporting evidence. Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meanie may seem out of place next to Brainiac and General Zod, but they're right at home next to the prankster, the toyman, and Mr. Oh boy, let's see what the AI makes of this curveball. Mr. McSeesplug. Oh dear. Well, you know what I mean. The little funny imp man with the magic powers. Anyway, creeps and crawls over here take their rocket ship to the North Pole to try and buy out Santa's workshop. And no, it's never explained how they got a rocket ship. They just have one. Deal with it. How does the Joker keep finding abandoned amusement parks to build his hideouts in? Sometimes you just have to deal with a little illogic in comic books. But of course, Santa sends the duo packing. He's been doing the Christmas thing for eons. He's not about to switch to manufacturing toxic waste or whatever Grouch and Meanie want him to create. Wait. Go back. Look! Look right there. Crypto ray guns. Oh, I made a video on those weird things. They're one of my favorite pieces of early Superman memorabilia. I'll put a link down in the description if you missed my video. Apparently, Santa is a sellout, but only to DC Comics and novelty toys. But this is certainly a nice surprise. It's a Christmas surprise. Here I thought that the crypto ray gun only showed up once in Superman comics, but they snuck it into Superman's Christmas adventure. And look closely at the elf's desk. That's a novelty toy Superman doll. But to get back on track, our villains decide that if they can't shut down Christmas through legal means, then they'll just use illegal means. They start their war on Christmas by breaking into the Daily Planet's toy drive and deploying a gas gun to knock out Lois and Clark, or so they think. Hold on, let me check something real quick. Let's see here. Superman's Christmas adventure was in December 1940, and the Sandman's first appearance was in New York's World's Fair Comics #1 in April 1939. One of the founding members of the Justice Society of America came very close to having his signature weapon scooped by a man named Dr. Grouch. Returning to our story, Grouch and Meanie set fire to the toy drive, but Clark drops the powerless act when their backs are turned and saves the day, as Superman is wont to do. Whoa! Grouch and Meanie sure escalated things rather quickly, didn't they? They went from being unpleasant businessmen to committing assault, arson, and since they left Lois and Clark in the fire, 2 counts of attempted murder all in the span of a single page. With their assault on the Daily Planet foiled, Grouch and Meanie fly back to the North Pole with the intent of killing Christmas cheer at its source. Look at that. They took out Hermie over there with the gas gun. You know, I would assume Santa's home defenses would have been a little tougher since he lives inside a science fortress. The Christmas village must be a high-trust society. But that tracks. It seems very homogeneous given how all the elves look and dress the same. Maybe they aren't elves at all? Maybe they're giant toys. Maybe they're toys that build other toys. Sure, you wouldn't expect a toy to breathe, but maybe that's all part of the act. Anyway, as is typical in these stories, Lois stowed away in the duo's ride to uncover their fiendish plot and publish it before all the world. And as is also typical in these stories, she's captured and tied to a giant rocket. How very Looney Tunes. So this is the second time these two have captured and tried to kill Lois. I can understand Lois getting overpowered by groups of burly gangsters, but these 2 dudes look like they don't have a decade of life left between the 2 of them. I think Lois should be able to take them. I think a stiff breeze should be able to take them. Grouch and Meanie return to Santa's workshop and resume wrecking the place, but are repelled by Santa deploying a toy army against them, including, of course, a novelty toys Superman doll. I bet that was the one that made them skedaddle. Wooden-bodied toys give nasty splinters. Also, this is the first time in any Superman comic that animated toys have been represented. Superman would make a habit of fighting animated toys as minions of his long-standing nemesis, the Toyman, but it's interesting to note that coming in at 1940, this story predates the Toyman by 3 years, which means that originally, moving toys were on the side of Superman. In Metropolis, Superman sees Lois in danger all the way at the North Pole, which is a pretty good feat for his telescopic vision. I'm going to have to remember to add this to the list when I do my Evolution of the Golden Age Superman's Powers and Abilities video. Metropolis is usually vaguely positioned on the east coast of the United States, so that means looking at a rocket above the North Pole would involve looking through the curvature of the Earth, unless the rocket was very high off the ground. So Superman either combined X-ray vision with his telescopic vision to look through the Earth, or DC's Earth is flat. And let's be honest, if that was true, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing about DC's Earth. Superman, as is again, typical for these stories, rescues Lois. But you won't believe what happens next after he drops her off in Metropolis. She gets kidnapped again. For the third time. The bad guys fly all the way back from the North Pole just to get Lois again. Man, they are really determined to cover all their bases. Then a couple of things happen very fast off-page. Yeah, this story is so hectic that they couldn't fit everything into the book. The bad guys drive to the North Pole, drop off Meanie to kidnap Santa's reindeer in a truck, and Grouch goes back to Metropolis and stashes Lois in his closet. You'd think he'd kill her then and there, just kick her out of the rocket ship or something, but no. He's probably waiting to find another giant rocket to tie her to before he kills her. Once you commit to eccentric and over-the-top acts of villainy, it's hard to quit them. It's addictive. Santa, noticing all his reindeer are gone, makes a call out on the airwaves for Superman. We've had so much story, and only now is Superman made directly aware of the plot. But check out that lightning bolt on Santa's microphone. Are we sure he wasn't trying to get in touch with another strongman in tights, maybe one connected to radio station Wiz? Santa might have confused Captain Marvel for Superman. Hey, it happens. Santa's old, and a lot of people confused Captain Marvel for Superman back in the day, most notably DC's lawyers. Superman, as typical for these stories, are you tired of me saying that yet, looks for Meanie and finds him and a truck full of reindeer in Metropolis. Now, hold on a minute. I thought Grouch dropped off Meanie and Meanie got a truck already at the Santa base. They managed to fit a whole truck in their rocket ship. Oh, I'm confused. No matter. I'll go into detail on how many trips to and from the North Pole are made in this story at the very end. But oh, Meanie gasses the reindeer. Why does this always happen in these superhero saves Christmas stories? Something always happens to the poor reindeer to put them out of commission. But it's no big deal. Superman carries Santa's sleigh and takes Meanie along for the ride. Now you're probably thinking, Otto, I thought you said Superman was only leaping in 1940, not flying, but it sure looks like he's flying here. Okay, hear me out. The first time Superman is ever explicitly said to be flying is in Superman 30, published in 1944. That means between Action Comics, one in 1938 and 1944, is a grey zone where Superman is either flying or leaping, depending on how you interpret the pose, and I like to think he's leaping in this story, because the mental image of Superman jumping up and down with Santa's sleigh is just too funny. Besides, this won't be the last time he carries Santa's sleigh. You know, I have to say, I'm disappointed in Death Battle. Superman's been on their show 3 times and will likely be on again, and yet not once have they calculated how fast Superman would have to be to help Santa with his rounds. Come on, wouldn't that be more fun to crunch the numbers on than finding out how many universes worth of power his jab is worth because he made dull event boss number 142 double over in pain? How fast did Superman move to save Christmas? My back-of-the-napkin calculation is faster than Goku, and that's what's important in the end. Superman stops by Grouch's house, and Grouch and Meanie rally to make a stand against Superman and Santa, but their hearts melt when they see that, though they've been extremely naughty this year, Santa still has presents for them. I guess Santa wasn't handing out coal that year, because the two would certainly qualify for coal otherwise. They've got several counts of assault, arson, destruction of property, trespassing, breaking and entering, cruelty to animals, kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, and 3 counts of attempted premeditated murder, all within a 24-hour period. Man, DC Santa is really, really forgiving. Is Darkseid the only guy that gets coal? I guess it's just the season of forgiveness, because even Lois forgives Grouch and Meanie once Grouch lets her out of his closet. But then again, Lois is probably desensitized to being assaulted and kidnapped. She considers a week where she isn't put in a death trap a very uneventful week. Oh, and look at this! The boy from the opening vignette is back, and he brought presents. Merry Christmas, one and all. And of course, as is typical for these kinds of stories, and if you're tired of me saying that, well, I'm not, Superman closes the issue by acknowledging me, you, and all his readers. Remember, everyone, Superman wants you to be charitable this holiday season. But before we close the issue, let's go back over the plot. Siegel and Schuster wrote Superman in very fast-paced, hectic stories. Superman zooms here, he zooms there, he does this, he does that. They didn't call his magazine Action Comics for nothing. But sometimes there's so much going on that the action becomes muddled, as is the case for Superman's Christmas adventure. By my count, Grouch and Meanie made 3 visits to the North Pole. They flew from Metropolis to the North Pole to try and buy out Santa. That's 1. Then they flew back to Metropolis to attack the toy drive, then back to the North Pole to attack Santa's workshop. That's 2. Then back to Metropolis to kidnap Lois, and back to the North Pole to steal Santa's reindeer. That's 3. Meanie made a bonus 4th trip to the North Pole when Superman brought his truck full of reindeer back to Santa. Lois made 2 trips to the North Pole. The first was when she stowed away on the rocket ship during Grouch and Meanie's 2nd trip, and the second was when Superman brought her with him when he flew Santa back to the North Pole at the adventure's conclusion. And Superman made 4 trips to the North Pole, tied with Mr. Meanie. He made his first to rescue Lois from the rocket death trap, his second to respond to Santa's radio call, his third to return Santa's reindeer, and his 4th to return Santa and his sleigh. And with that, we close the book on Superman's Christmas adventure and jump to Action Comics 105 in the year 1947. Our Santa crossover story is called The Man Who Hated Christmas and shares several story beats with Superman's Christmas adventures. In it, an over-the-top Scrooge with strange and improbable technology named Jasper Rasper wages a war on Christmas. What a name, huh? Like Grouch and Meanie, he will fly himself to the North Pole, bedevil Santa, incapacitate the reindeer, and be forgiven at the end in a display of the redemptive power of the Christmas spirit. On the whole, I think I prefer this story to Superman's Christmas adventures. It's shorter and less muddled while covering much of the same themes. Still, I have to say, I'm disappointed by the lack of crypto-ray guns in this story. Our story opens with Jasper Rasper heading to the North Pole armed with a box of strange drug-laced chocolates. Oh, look, he put his name on the side of his helicopter. That's so cute. And just listen to him. I'm coming, Santa, and you'll be sorry. This guy is so over the top I almost want him to win. Meanie and Grouch didn't put their names on the side of their rocket ship. This guy did. There's something to be said for going the extra mile. Unlike in Superman's Christmas adventure, Superman is brought into the plot right off the bat as Jasper's butler rats him out. A butler can tolerate many things, but not someone trying to cancel Christmas. But Superman is too late. Jasper gives Santa the drug chocolates and tampers with the reindeer's feed. See? The reindeers always get the short end of the stick in these stories. I do like that Jasper takes his swing in one go. It's not like in Superman's Christmas adventure, where the bad guys half mess with Santa and half mess with Lois Lane. The Man Who Hated Christmas is much more streamlined and flows much better as a story. And look at Jasper. He said he's going to make Christmas a floperoo. A floperoo. I love this guy. So, what's the damage? What did the chocolates do to Santa? Well, what do chocolates do to anyone? They made him fat. Well, fatter. The chocolates were laced with an experimental drug that rapidly increases fat production. Ew, sounds like something from DeviantArt, doesn't it? Oh well, I suppose it was a more innocent time. The point is, the drugged chocolates made Santa fat to the point he can no longer fit down chimneys. But Superman has a solution. A super weight loss program. Super massaging. Wait a minute, that works? You can just massage fat away? Well, if Superman says so, I suppose it has to be valid. After all, he's got super intelligence. Super volcano sauna. Well, if you say so, Superman. Geez, did Santa accidentally slip a Captain Marvel toy into Clark Kent's stocking or something? Super aquaplaning over the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, this one seems really fun to do. Super dancing. Again, this seems fun, though after the volcano it seems rather mundane and underwhelming. Super meteor chicken. Wait, what? Good Lord, Superman, don't kill Santa Claus. Superman is lucky Santa didn't lose more than a few pounds from fear. Santa is like a gorillion years old and overweight. He doesn't have the strongest heart. Oh man, can you imagine if Superman accidentally scared Santa to death? Batman and the other Justice Leaguers would never let him live it down. And add this Santa feat to the list of significant Golden Age Superman feats. Superman's got real good reflexes to get that close to a meteor and swat it away. But anyway, the meteor finally shaves off Santa's excess pounds, and he completes his course in Superman's probably not Geneva Convention's approved workout regimen. But the reindeer are still drugged. What's Santa going to do without reindeer to fly his sleigh? You know what Santa's going to do? It's what he did in the last story. He gets Superman to fly it. And this time there's no argument. Superman is definitely flying with Santa's sleigh, not leaping with it. And it's good to see that Santa still considers Superman a friend after that meteor bit. Superman's lucky he didn't wind up on the coal list for life. Though given what Superman typically does to coal, that wouldn't be such a bad thing for him. But look. On their way out from the North Pole, Santa and Superman find Jasper Rasper stranded on an ice floe after his funny Thanos copter before the Thanos copter ride broke down. Superman saves Jasper from winding up in the ending to that perennial holiday classic, John Carpenter's The Thing, and it's time for some heartwarming Christmas redemption. It turns out that for such a goofy character, Jasper's motivations aren't that different from the motivations of the modern Lex Luthor. Strange to think that the philosophy of Superman's most enduring foe was first articulated by a guy named Jasper Rasper in a Santa Claus crossover. Speaking of Lex, you know what I'm surprised DC hasn't done? Lex Luthor versus Christmas. A great story could be told about Lex Luthor trying to take down Santa. Maybe he tries to convince people that Santa doesn't exist, or that Santa is really evil and stealing things from their homes. But his aim is to convince Santa to quit and then position himself as Santa's successor and owner of his Christmas workshop. But at his lowest point, just when Santa thinks he might actually quit, who should come to his aid but his old pal Superman? Just add some supervillain goons hired by Lex to sabotage the sleigh ride for the obligatory fight scenes modern comics need to have, and you're good to print. At the end of the story, Santa gives Lex an Albert Einstein book he wanted to read as a kid, but never got as a reference to the classic Elliot S. Maggin Superman story, The Einstein Connection. Lex Luthor doesn't have many redeeming qualities, but he's always had a soft spot for fellow geniuses. Lex pretends not to be touched by the gift and donates lots of money to charity as a way to pay for the present. He hates the idea of being given anything. But did Lex really donate all that money to square things with Santa and Superman? Or did he decide that once a year, even a man like himself can be charitable and giving? That's for the reader to decide. Call me DC, we'll do lunch. Anyway, let's return to the man who hated Christmas. Touched that Superman and Santa saved his miserable life, Jasper Rasper vows to reform his ways and starts by wishing Superman and Santa a Merry Christmas and sending gifts to the family of a man he fired. The end. I like Jasper's turn far more than Meanie and Grouch's, probably because Jasper actually works to earn his redemption and didn't commit that much evil to begin with. He slipped Santa some drugged chocolates and knocked out the reindeer, but he didn't try and kill a woman 3 times. And of course, as is typical for these stories, Superman breaks the 4th wall after the story wraps to wish you, me, and all his fans a Merry Christmas. Our third and final Superman Santa crossover is DC Comics Presents 67, printed in 1984. That means Santa didn't see Superman for 37 years, and quite a lot happened to both characters in the span of those years that we need to address before we dive into DC Comics present 67. The Superman of Superman's Christmas Adventure and Action Comics, 105, the Golden Age Superman, became the Superman of Earth 2, a universe populated by DC's World War II era heroes. The Superman of DC Comics presents 67 is the Superman of Earth 1, the Silver Age Superman who hasn't met Santa Claus yet. Keep that in mind. We're starting with a new slate for Superman. As for Santa, he got his own DC comic, sort of. In 1950, DC got the license to publish Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer comics, and these comics, of course, featured Santa. If you're only familiar with Rudolph through the 1964 Rankin-Bass stop-motion film, you might be wondering what he's doing in a 1950 DC comic. It turns out that the history of Rudolph goes back much further than the Christmas special. Perhaps I'll do a video on it one day. But to make a long story short, Rudolph was created in 1939 by Robert L. May in a little story booklet sold at department stores. In 1948, Rudolph's popularity soared with a theatrical cartoon by Max Fleischer, the same man behind the influential Superman theatrical cartoons. You know, the ones with the flying robots and Godzilla before Godzilla. His popularity reached even greater heights in 1949 when he got his iconic song. You know the one. You're probably hearing it in your head right now. And in 1950, he became part of the DC universe. Marvel got Godzilla and Transformers, DC got Rudolph. Anyway, it's revealed in the Rudolph comics that Santa and his friends live inside dreams. You know the dreaming from Neil Gaiman's Sandman? It started here, with Santa. And while Santa, being a creature of dreams from the dreaming, is certainly an obscure bit of lore, is not a forgotten and discarded one. Take a look here. This is the map of the DC multiverse Grant Morrison made for Multiversity back in 2014. The map was an elegant way to explain decades of continuity and drew from across DC's vast library for references. It drew from Vertigo, Wildstorm, Jack Kirby, Gardner Fox, and Rudolph. Let's zoom in on the spot where it explains what the dreaming is. See, even after all these years, Santa Claus remains a creature of the dreaming. So keep that in mind as we dive into DC Comics present 67. Santa lives inside a dream, like a benevolent version of those weird Black Lodge spirits from Twin Peaks. DC Comics presents 67 opens with Superman stopping a robbery on a street Santa committed by a little boy hypnotized by a toy pop gun. That's sure a way to open up a story. If it wasn't clear from the cover, the pop gun gives away the villain of the story, the Toyman. And may I say, I love how Superman called the guy Santa, even though he's the only one present besides a mindless child. Superman would be an excellent wrestler. He completely gets kayfabe. Superman brings the boy, whose name is Timmy Dickens, to the Fortress of Solitude, where he uses an alien device to fix his mind. I miss when Superman would use the tools he stored inside the Fortress of Solitude. It feels like modern writers don't use the fortress as anything but background wallpaper. But while flying Timmy home, Superman is blasted by a bolt of energy from Timmy's prized toy spaceship and tumbles to the earth. Oh, come on, Superman. You knew you were up against the Toyman and you didn't check the other toy the kid was holding? Sloppy. Batman would have checked for sure, but then again, he likely wouldn't have detected anything even if he did check. If you thought Toyman blasted Superman with your bog-standard kryptonite ray, you thought wrong. He picked out one of Superman's obscure weaknesses, a weakness that probably only made it into the story because its writer, E. Nelson Bridwell, was a veritable historian of comic books. That weakness would be intense gravity. No, seriously. It hasn't been used since Crisis on Infinite Earths. But back in the day, Superman would lose his powers when exposed to gravity that mimicked the conditions of Krypton, which had gravity so intense that Superman once likened it to a black hole. That intense gravity has been given as one of the reasons why Krypton's core exploded, and it's sometimes used to depower Superman like kryptonite and red solar radiation. My favorite use of gravity as one of Superman's weaknesses was in Batman and the Outsiders 19, which, amusingly enough, was a Christmas story. Returning to our story, Timmy finds himself in quite the dire predicament. Superman is knocked out, and he's stuck in the middle of the Arctic. I'm surprised no one has made a story just on this situation. Imagine Superman and a kid get stuck within a few miles outside the Fortress of Solitude, and Superman is without his powers. Superman has to keep the kid warm and calm while he works out a way to break into his own fort. I'd love a scene where he builds an igloo with his bare hands and explains to the kid how it traps heat. Warmth can be found even in the coldest and darkest of places. That feels like a very Superman sentiment. But anyway, Timmy is in dire straits, but could those elf-shaped shadows indicate salvation? Of course they do. Superman wakes up warm and toasty inside Santa's workshop. Ho, ho, ho! Superman can't believe that Santa is real and that they're North Pole neighbors. He thinks he must be dreaming. And well, remember what I said earlier about Santa and dreams. Just keep that in mind for now. Santa takes Superman to his computer room and reveals to him that his elves have been keeping tabs on the Toyman. Santa is ready to team up with Superman and bust the Toyman together as soon as Big Blue is ready. Earth 2 Santa's workshop was a high-tech science fortress on the outside, but an old-timey workshop on the inside, and Earth 1 Santa's workshop was an old-timey workshop on the outside, but a computer fortress on the inside. Interesting how that worked out. But I have to say, I think I prefer Earth 2 Santa's setup. Earth 1 Santa's computer room is less evocative of Christmas cheer than it is IBM cubicle work. And it seems Earth 1 Santa shares my sentiments. Before he and Superman leave, he waxes nostalgic about the days of vintage toys. You and me, both, Santa? I long for the days of crypto-ray guns, lead figurines, and wooden novelty Superman dolls. And Superman waxes nostalgic about a hologram toy Daddy Jor-El gave him when he was but a super tyke. You see, unlike the Earth 2 or post-crisis Superman, the Earth 1 Superman had a perfect photographic memory. He vividly remembered the little time he had on Krypton before he got stuffed into a rocket, and this would make him overall a more melancholy character than either the Superman that came before him or the Superman that came after him. And wait, hold on. That weird alien hologram looks familiar. That's Battle Cat, isn't it? You know, He-Man's cat? From Masters of the Universe? I have no doubt in my mind that this was an intentional reference. Superman crossed over with He-Man in DC Comics Presents 47, and the title ran several Masters of the Universe comics as backup features. Superman and Santa track down the Toyman, who, of course, sicks his toy army on Superman. What does he always do when cornered by Superman? Superman ends up having trouble with the toys. Oh no, Superman bros, are we plastic level? A combination of Superman not having fully recovered from the gravity beam and kryptonite within the toys puts Superman on the ropes, but Santa comes to the rescue. Santa deploys his own toy army, and the battle becomes good toys versus evil toys, toys created by magic and love versus toys created by science and madness. And check out the bottom left. Those are totally Autobots and Decepticons going at it. But they can't transform, otherwise DC would get a call from Hasbro's lawyers. The fight quickly shrinks down to Superman versus Chinese knockoff Darth Vader, and Toyman draws a gravity gun to shoot Superman in the back with. But once again, it's Santa to the rescue. Good Santa. Toyman's shot goes wide, hits the knockoff toy, and increases its weight to the point it sinks to the center of the Earth. A pity. I like knockoff toys, but it's an even greater pity that no one ever did a follow-up where the giant toy lands in Skartaris. You know, DC's take on Pellucidar from Warlord? Hey, I'll try and do a video on it one day. With Toyman handed off to the police, it seems that everyone is ready to retire for a long winter's night. But what's this? A plot twist? Timmy accidentally shoots Superman with the spaceship weapon again, and Superman wakes up in the snow. Was it all just a dream? Yes, but also no. Remember what I said earlier about Santa being a creature of the dreaming? And look at that! Santa made a copy of Jor-El's hologram toy for Superman. That's neat. I wish artists would sneak it and the crypto-ray gun into drawings of the Fortress of Solitude. Have it show a hologram of Krypton unless it's the holidays, in which case Superman switches it to a Santa hologram to be festive. I quite liked this story. This is the Superman Christmas comic I recommend to new Superman readers. Bridwell, as to be expected, incorporates the wider mythology of the DC universe well. Not only is Santa tied to dreams like in the old Rudolph comics, but Toyman uses a fragment of a white dwarf star to create his weapon, a reference to Ray Palmer and the device he uses to alter his mass and gravity. It's just such a fun story, and Toyman fighting against Santa's toys was a nice callback to Superman's Christmas adventure. And now we've reached the end of our journey through Superman's history with Santa Claus, his North Pole neighbor. So remember that while the recent Silent Night comic writes that Batman has had a long history with Santa, it's not as long as Superman's history with the Jolly Man in Red. And let me say that while Superman and Santa have wished you a Merry Christmas 3 times in this video, I want to give you season's greetings not from Santa and Superman, but from me to you, dear viewer. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.